I need to do a mic check just here real quick, make sure that we're back and doing okay. Okay, so I apologize for that little interruption. And I apologize that this has to now be separated into two videos instead of one like I normally would, but my ISP decided to crap out right at the last minute, which is a very frustrating situation and it looks embarrassing. But nonetheless, we need to continue with this subject, so please bear with me. It's annoying, I know, having to put up with two separate videos when logically there should only be a reason to watch one video. But before I got cut off, we were talking about features that you can do with the housing system and how the apartments need to be reworked completely or they need to be removed from free companies specifically because in their current state they're just not very good at all. And then we talked about the stations, like how you can have stations that you can craft with a crafting job. And this allows you to basically live at your house or, part of the RPG element of the game so you can have your own station at home rather than being forced out into the open map constantly. Well, instead, you can just like have your own station at home. And I mean, has its ups and downs. Like the cost to the benefit is up to you. So whichever you would prefer, method you would prefer, that is um, up to you to decide. Now, the other thing I mentioned, of course, with housing is that you have the ability to place your chocobo companion down on sort of a plot, and you can use this chocobo stable to dye your chocobo's feathers a certain color, and you can also help them gain level up experience so that they can progress further in their field of discipline, whether that's as a healer, tank, or ADPS. And then there's the garden feature also tied to housing, which gardening um, allows for you to get essential ingredients for crafting um, recipes as well as housing items. Sometimes they can even help you get a minion or a mount. And then the rest, you could just like basically sell gardening materials for monetary gain in game. So, and then of course, like I was stating in the previous video, I wish I could have said section, but my stupid internet service decided to not be cooperative. But there's furniture placements you can do. You can put wallpapers, light fixtures, and all that good fun down. Basically, think of it as like The Sims, how you can build a house up to however you like it to look and feel. Now, along with that, there's limitations. You are set on the limit of furnishings and furniture you can place down or put up, and it's the same for outside. There's a limitation to what you can have up and displayed, which is very unfortunate because some players really like to go all out and they have ideas, but then the idea can't be realized because there's limitations, and the limitations are due to because it causes server issues and instability, which leads to crashing your game client and making it so that you can't play or access housing. So limitations are very annoying. As someone who owns a in-game house, I can tell you there's lots of times where I wish I had no limits and I could really deck out and customize my home to how I want it to look and feel. And regrettably, we just can't do that because of the limitations. And that's just one of many L's that the devs take with this current system. Now, we move into island sanctuary territory here now. And you might be thinking, well, what does this really have to do with housing? Well, it has a lot to do with housing because the island is a customizable instance area that belongs to you, the player. And you can share this island with your friends or with people that join a party with you. And basically, it serves a dual purpose. Like, not only is it a place you can just sort of visit and hang out a little bit with friends, like you can't like idle in here forever, which is why I've been moving around and doing stuff like this, for example, because after about 10 minutes of being idle, they remove you from this instance because, again, limitations in their server system can't hold the loadout of having so many players in one reserved instant at one time, which was a very lazy route to go with implementation of this, I feel like. And like I said, don't take this as an insult because it's not an insult towards the devs. It's a critique, a criticism, and there are quite a bit of differences between insulting and critiquing. If you can't tell the difference, then you are a child and you shouldn't be part of these kinds of conversations to begin with. But to me, I feel that way though, that the way they decided to go about reserving the instance for these island sanctuary was very lazy and poorly managed and poorly thought out. And it's unfortunate because a lot of people were looking forward to this content and looking forward to making it their own slice of life, if you will. But they can't do that because they can't idle in it. And to further add insult to injury there with this, um, there's node spawns, like specific animals you can capture and place in your animal pen area where you can feed and pet them basically like a zoo, if you will. But these animals are on timers. Some of those timers can spread out across very, very long amount of time. Plus weather conditions too on top of that. So how did they realistically plan this out, but yet still decide that there has to be a timer to kick you out of the instance? Which then, when you go back in, that resets the instance. So then you just lost all that time for nothing. So that's why it's a bit of an insult. And it was poorly thought out, poorly managed. But again, how does this intertwine with housing, you're still asking? Well, with this little island, you can construct things like so. This is like a garden hangout area for you and your friends to be able to sit at, take pictures, or just to mess around. And not only that, but if you notice the ground here, you can customize how these stairs and these grounds look like. So you could make it look all gravelly like this, or if you want it to be a dirt-like path, you can do that. And you can also mix and match them. And then there's the buildings themselves, which are the workshops which you will use to obtain stuff from this content. You can customize how they look as well. You just click on this and then you can change from one of three options. And then once you decide, then it's down and you have the look. Not only can you change that, but you can also change this main little area here where you actually will spend a lot of your time in doing the type of content that's available here. Now, this is also again limited by what the developers allow you to put down So unfortunately, you can't like just decide like you want to put a statue down or something like that. But rather, these are um, decided and pre-planned things which they code specifically for this map. And a lot of players were a little unhappy about that because again they wanted this island to be their little slice of life, and in a way it is. So if you don't own a house and you don't like an apartment, then there's this island here they give you to essentially be your little home away from home, I guess. But unfortunately, it's still very much feels like it's in like a beta phase. And they said that they were going to do more with it, but so far they really haven't done a whole lot with it. Like the last update we got on this was really nothing special. They gave us a new furnishing placement, which is this garden thing. They gave us like new like rewards to go clamp away at by doing the content here. And that was it, essentially. And to a lot of people, that felt like very dissatisfying because they really want to just have a house and then they want a yard and they want to be able to plop down a garden and like if they want to put their chocobo down on the outdoor area and they want to also be able to have a workshop. Like they don't want the exclusivity that's currently this egregious system. Like, and again, like I outlined in my other video before we got cut off, like a lot of it has to do with mistranslations, and it really feels like the translations are done on like a very intern level instead of a professional level. And so I think that they really should consider strongly implementing a translation team which sole purpose is to collect and translate feedback from various outlets that channel feedback to the game, which would be Twitter, Reddit, Discord, um, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok. Like, they should really, really hire a dedicated team of professionals, not interns. Not people who just applied for the position because they saw it on like Craigslist or whatever listing. but like actual people with credentials and with, the professionalism required to obtain feedback that's valuable. And they shouldn't just like pick and choose their favorites either. Like, they should be very strict and very precise on what feedback is necessary. Like, I do get it, yes, from a professional or business standpoint. Like, a lot of it can come off as just complaining for the sake of complaining about something, but maybe instead of writing it off, they should just investigate it a little further, you know, like be more like a journalist or a private eye investigator. Like, really get to the details, the greater details of why this feels like a complaint and why people are buzzing about it and stuff. And I'm getting ahead of myself here, but that's basically a solution I feel like they could really work on to fixing this not so good housing system. But anyway, we've basic I've basically now given you like the types of housing, how to acquire, and the limitations and scarcity. So let's go ahead and jump right into possible solutions here. Like, what can we essentially do to try and fix this broken and frankly thorn in our in both players and developers side type of content. So, one solution we talked about just a minute ago, which is just hire a very dedicated and very strict team and very professional team of translation who sole purpose is to collect crucial and needed feedback, and they need to not be able to not cherry pick their favorites or like not play favorites whatsoever, in fact. And also, they need to be more investigative with their work and not just pick and choose like keywords or key phrases and then call it a day. Because that's not going to improve this situation any. It's just going to make it worse. So, I would say for them to do that, put together a more strict, more professional team with the sole intent and purpose to collect, investigate, and provide feedback from the player base to directly to the developers of Final Fantasy XIV so that the developers actually know what's up. They know how people actually feel, that they're not just stuck squarely between a rock and a hard place or put in like this awkward situation where they misread or misinterpreted what the actual player feedback was. So, and then another solution is to go in more instance house direction. So, when we say that instance house idea, we're not saying that they have to delete the old system, that they should completely remove the old, and like we're not telling them to get out with the old and in with the new, basically. But what we are asking them to do is to make housing available more inclusive than exclusive. Like, yeah, I know they've given all these excuses, okay. So I'm not completely grandstanding and giving them a pass and saying that they've done an amazing job so far. Because with this system, they haven't. And a lot of people have given feedback that this is the worst housing they've ever seen in an MMO RPG type of game. And that other games they've played have done housing like phenomenally better. And they're probably right. And in fact, a lot of what they say is true. There's a lot of games that are strength, one of their strengths is the in their housing systems, and it allows players more freedom and more options, which Final Fantasy XIV is currently lacking in that department. The freedom and the options, the more options and availability. So when we say that we want to go a more instance house direction, what we're really saying is that we want a private area where it's just only for ourselves, and we can have a house any size that we want it to be. Whether we want it to be a tiny, small little cottage home, or whether we want it to be this grand mansion style home. We just want to have the option to choose. And then, like I said, people want the option to be able to experience what features come with housing, which again, that would be workshops, that would be chocobos, that would be mailboxes and gardening, and just being able to have an outdoor area to decorate and have fun with. And even with these limitations, we've seen people create some amazing stuff. Like, some people gotten pretty creative with the limitations, but just think of how much further they could go if these limitations didn't exist to begin with. And a lot of things people don't understand too is they get this idea that, oh, an instant housing will never work because it's going to be flawed, it's going to have crashing all the time. And I'm like, just take a look at the expansions they make every single, like every 4 years essentially. They add like entire instance zones. Every expansion, an entirely new zone for players to jump in and do stuff. And in these zones is like several furnishings, trees, houses, plants, animals, enemy mobs, etherites, like water and all that stuff, waterfalls and everything else. Waterfalls, lakes, rivers, mountains, and hills. They add all this stuff. Then you're really saying that instance housing can't be the same way? Really? You've been fooling yourself the whole time. Because they've clearly shown you that it's possible, that it can be done. And that's exactly what players want with instance housing. Okay, they just want their own little area where they can live, put a house on, they can decorate it, they can use a workshop in it, they can, you know, train their chocobo or use their chocobo in it. Or they could become a gardener of some kind. Like, that's all people are asking for with an instance house. They're not asking for the dev teams to promise the whole moon and everything. Like, they're not asking the devs to do the impossible here. Okay, they're really not. And that's the other thing is like the devs can even add like new areas like mid expansion. And people are still out here saying, "Oh, it would never work. It would be too bad. It wouldn't. It'd be so limited compared to other things." I'm like, well, you don't know that because they never tried. And if you think this island thing is their version of trying, that's a big joke right there. Because this isn't even close to being an attempt to like an instance housing. Granted, yes, I talked about what makes this like housing, like the customizable features of this island where you can personalize it is in essence a housing like feature. And it might actually be like that's what the intention was behind this island sanctuary being designed that way is because they wanted to test, okay, they wanted to test how far they could push the limit of instances. And guess what? They found out. They found out how hard they could push this island sanctuary instance. So guess what? Now they know exactly what to do to make it work. Now they've had an aha moment. So, are you people starting to stay with me here? I hope so. I hope I haven't lost you yet, because that's what I'm saying here, though, is that this island sanctuary could be a test for something they want to try later on down the line for instance housing, like people have been asking for now. In fact, people have been asking for instance housing like for a while. It's not just like something that's popped up just recently. It's gained more traction and more attention now, but it's been something that's been requested ever since housing began, which we talked about in the first part of this topic discussion. That, you know, basically they made it free company exclusive, but then that wasn't working out for them so well, so then they tried a different route and it still wasn't working out. And they missed the mark on the feedback because people wanted to, they wanted to have an instance house. They didn't want an entire neighborhood because that's part of what causes the issue and the shortages also, is the fact that they're all tied and crumpled into a neighborhood. It imposes all the limitations and causes the server issues. Whereas if they took out the problem, if they just left and abandoned the system as it is, like people who have a house now, personal house, don't take it away from them. Just leave them alone. Leave it in, but don't keep adding on to the problem that's already present and that they know is there. And don't try to fix it with bandages, hoping that something's going to eventually stick, because it's never going to stick. You're never going to fix the problem because that problem's just going to lead to further limitations. And that's going to cause still complaints to occur. And this vicious, repetitive cycle will not have an end until either they just stop working on housing altogether and say they want to improve other areas of the game and that the system's holding them back for their vision of the game, or they just add instance housing and make it so that anyone and everyone can have a house in a condensed area where it's just single player or free company group, and they can all share this tiny condensed instance area, which again, like I said, it's not impossible for them to add an instance area specifically for that purpose, because they've done so already. They do so every expansion. Sometimes they do it midway expansion, like I just pointed out. The Dome and Enclave area, for example, and the Ishkard Restoration area is another example. Like, these things had to be planned out before the expansion launched. And then they have to decide what patch to patch them into, or what time frame they will need basically to make that particular thing work. And so they tell their like team lead or their team manager, saying like, we're working on it, we have an idea of how this is going to play out, but we need X amount of time to test and debug and make sure that it's ready for presentation. Can you allow us that leeway? And then the manager or the lead will be like, yeah, I can go have a talk with, you know, like Yoshida-san, or, whoever's the head of their development department. Or they'll be like, no, I don't think that's plausible. Can you maybe trim it down or make some cuts to things? And you know, they'll have to do what they have to do because management told them no, that they had to have it done by a strict type of deadline. But even so, I'll give these devs credit where credit is due. They do have a passion for creating stuff, for making stuff, or fixing stuff in some cases. An good example of that is when they heard how unhappy players were when Hrothgar and Vieira were introduced into the game, how they couldn't wear hats or glasses like all the other players could. The team actually who was responsible for that, they actually got together like in their spare time, like when they're not working on the clock, they used their actual free time, and they made it so that I think it was like over 100 items would fit and would work for Vieira's and Hrothgar. And this came as a shock to the producer, Mr. Yoshida, because they didn't even tell him that they were doing that. you know, they just did it because they wanted to, because they felt sorry for these players who were feeling left out, you know. And they didn't want these players to feel left out, so you know, they did their work, they did what they had to do, and then when they had the free time, they did some work, and they probably took turns, whichever these programmers and like staff members were working on like gear sets and gear fitting and stuff. They took turns with each other probably on who would do what and when. So, but then they surprised us, and they surprised Mr. Yoshida. Said, look, we got all this done. We did what we needed to do because we didn't have, approval from management or approval from our lead. So we decided we were going to do this because we heard how unhappy people are. and we wanted to change that and make it so that they were included and they were happy. So I think that's the ultimate goal that they should continue to strive for with the housing system here, is that they should strive to make it more inclusive rather than exclusive. And like they should really like flesh it out more. And I think instance housing is one good solution to go about it, is if they just allow us to have like our own condensed area just to live on. That's instance. And like I said, this island sanctuary could very well have been a test for that too. And like I don't want to promise that it is. I don't want to, be too highly suggestive that that is what they're actually doing, but you just never know, like there's a reason behind everything. And I think that um the fact that they pushed island sanctuary to the limit, it shows that they are considering it for future content, and that they found the limit of where they could push. And so now they have what they need to do to be able to do whatever it is they're going to do with that feedback which they received from the limit pushing. So, which I think could very well be an instance housing plot. That could have been part of what they wanted to see, is like, and even like the features too of this island sanctuary. Like I said, you can plant down structures like in key areas. You can change the layout of these structures, some of these structures, like how they look. You can put minions down and they can run around in this area. And you can just change like how the whole place looks and make it personalized to you. And I don't think that they would be doing that just solely for for it to die on this hill. Like I think that they wanted to see how these features would be received and how they might be able to use it to their advantage. So I look at some of the features of this island sanctuary as a positive in that regard, because then it shows like they are like thinking about it. They're thinking about what they can do um, to make it so that this might be possible to implement at a later point in time. Now, if you went and you watched my Island Sanctuary video, you may have noticed that I also suggested that the ultimate carrot on the stick that they could dangle in front of us to get us to fully complete this content and like make it so that this content just doesn't die after this expansion is if they gave us like at the very end, like on the last update that they have planned for this specific content, like the ultimate reward that we could get from completing it to its max rank is if at the end they gave us a quest that tells us, hey, you did a really great job working on this island. It's productive and it's rich in resources and wealth. And because you did that and made it so that everything is flourished and alive, um, we pulled a few strings and, Merwib, because she's the one who helped us procure this island. Tataru could be like, Merwib says that she wants to give you your own little home on this island, this other island. And then there you go. There's your instance home. That would 100% guarantee that players will do this content continuously just so that they can have their own instance home, that they can have a home. And they don't have to fight for it with other players, and they won't have to compete, and they won't have to sit and hope and pray that RNG is merciful when it's never is. And they'll just have their own instance island house. And they could go even further with these like islands, and they could make like it have weather cycles, like have it cycle through like night and day and rain, like just like any other area, so that it gives it more like character. And then like say during like when there's a season, like say like winter for example, you could say like it snows, which they already do with the housing areas. They make it snow when it's like winter time. They could do that too. And they could also borrow like the layout idea from this island sanctuary and make it so that like you can change the type of grass in the ground. Like let's say you want to have just all be like rubble and rocks, then you could put down rubble and rock as a preset. Or like say you want sand for like to have it be like a beach or like a desert, then you can put down sand. Or like if you want snow, you want it to be a snowy paradise, then there you go. You can put down like snow and ice. Like there's so much they could do with the right tools and the right direction. And that's what I would really like them to do if they do indeed plan to go down an instance house route. Is just take the good things from the island sanctuary that they learned, add it in there, and take the good things from the old housing system, add it in to the instance housing as well. Like just take all the good things they've learned and add it to this new housing instance housing system. And then that would placate everyone, the majority of everyone. There would never be complaints again, like ever. Like, sure, people would still have to go to a market board. Like, I know it's not possible for them to go ahead and add market boards into an instance house because that will just be a programming nightmare, I'm sure, with this crappy game engine they've been using. Like, I know that there'd be limitations, certain limitations for instance housing. I know it's not going to be a perfect system, but at the very least, it would allow people to have any house size of their choosing. They could have a garden, they could have chocobo there, they could have a workshop there. They could customize the layouts of the grounds and of the house itself. And everyone would be happy. Everyone would have a house. And their only complaints would be very little things, just minor things compared to the lists of ongoing complaints that have been caused by this headache and unnecessary housing system that we currently have right now. Now, other solution they could try is they could like add a ward that's meant specifically for single players only and not be tied to free companies or the old system. And this new ward that they add, or new wards, like it doesn't have to be just like one ward and one sub ward. But let's say they were to add like 5 more wards just for single players. Only the acquisition of these wards is not going to be tied to lottery. It's not going to be first come, first serve. But instead, it will be tied to your main story progression and tied to a specific quest, with requirement being that you've had to have completed the current expansion for that um, new housing, and like you have to have done like all the previous other housing related quests. So like you'd have to have gone and done all unlocked like all 3 of the other like housing districts basically. And then once you've met all those requirements, then you can pick a plot from the menu itself, and then it will take you to that reserved instance of where that plot is. in that ward, and then they can go from there. Like, they can make it so that only people who've met the requirements will be able to choose an instance to obtain a house, basically. And of course, it would still require gil, so the person would need to have the requisite amount. Let's just say, like, the average player can obtain, like, if they did all the expansions and stuff, and they only use their gil for, like, teleportation and, like, upgrading pieces of gear, then the average player, if they played all the way up past Endwalker, would carry about 3 million gil max. So let's say then that in order for them to get one of these special reserved houses in one of these 5 wards, they would need the gil of about 1,500,000, 1.5 million gil. That's all they would need. And, that's easy to get a hold of without a doubt. Like, even I could get that much within just like a couple hours of doing like turn-ins and retainer ventures, um, the dungeon maps, or even, Palace of the Dead or Eureka type content or Bosnia. I could easily get that much gil within a short time span and be able to reserve my spot before they're filled, basically. And then they could do that solution. But it would just be like an experiment, I guess you could say, rather than a complete like solution. But in any case, the goal is just to make it so that everyone has a house, and with said house they can have it be any size, and they can use a workshop, garden, chocobo, and Moogle mail systems. And that will solve a lot of the problem. Like, no doubt, that would solve a lot of the problem. And there's one more solution that comes to mind. In the event that instance housing, which I don't think instance housing would fail, instance housing has the highest success chance to succeed compared to the other solution I mentioned. But another thing they could go for is private servers. So let's say that they create a mega host server for like players to like reserve in a private server for themselves and their friends. And you could say also that this private server would increase the sub price for this individual wanting to have their own private server to themselves or to invite their friends in. So you could they could realistically charge the player who wants their private server, like let's say, charge them like an extra $10 fee or something like that on top of their monthly subscription price. So that way, if they don't pay their subscription, then they'll lose access to their private server, and then that private server can be claimed by another player, etc. And the private server, of course, would include having access to the housing areas that are available in game. So that means that a player and their friends would be able to have any ward and any house plot they want, essentially. That would fix problems. That would fix the problem too. But for how long, I couldn't say. But it's another option, another route they could go. It's not the best option. In fact, it's probably the scummiest option they could go with. But it would still work, you know. And if the person and their friends agreed to it, they could also take turns paying for the private server too. So that it's more fair, more equal. Like they could have it so that I guess you could assign co-owners of the private server, and then those co-owners would be responsible for the fee in the event that you know the host owner like fails to pay the fee or whatever. Then the co-owner could get this email saying like, you will lose access and privileges to your private server unless you re sub to the game and you pay the monthly, like, or however long fee. And then step, the co-owners can like step in and pay it, and then they'll still be able to keep that private server. And they're sub sequentially keep their houses too. So, like I said, that's like probably the scummiest way they could do it, but it would still be an effective solution, and it would stop all the bots who like to spam housing places. It would stop the RMTers from buying up all the houses and then reselling them, which is an activity that's frowned upon. And it's also bannable by the developers. If they catch you doing anything like that, they're going to not only are they going to take your houses away that you stole or that you bought, but they're also going to take your account away probably. But that scummy solution would make it so that those types of people stop at least. And I mean, sure they might advertise it still, like saying, "Hey, I'll sell you a ticket into my private server if you pay me this amount." Like I'm sure that's yeah, that's still going to be a problem, but again, that's it wouldn't make it so that players would have to do that though. Like, and it would place, like I said, responsibility on that person, that RMT bastard. They would still have to pay for that server. So there's three solutions they could potentially try. Um, if you guys have any other ideas or solutions, or if you have complaints you want to voice, then you're more than welcome to do so in the comment section. Um, I just ask that you be civil with each other in the comments. Like, don't be at each other's throats, please. Don't be insulting each other or telling other people that they're wrong for having a house or that, like, their idea is stupid and that they should go kill themselves. Like, please don't be like that. Be respectful. Like I said, I know all the gripes and frustrations with this housing system. I've seen it plenty of times. And I'm just one of those unfortunate lucky ones who got his plot before the system got even worse than it is currently. And but because of my relationship with this game at present, I'm not sure if I'll even really want to keep this house. So, but if they did go full instance housing, then that would also like be good for me. Then I could give up my house, no problem. My current house, no problem. I would give it up in a heartbeat for an instance house of my own. But anyway, that'll be it for my topic discussion on housing in this video and in the previous one. So, in fact, I think what I'll do when this video is done being published, I'll link to the first video so that you guys don't have to go to the hassle to try and search for it in my library, I guess. And that way you can also provide feedback there on that video too. Anyway, it's been a fun topic, though not really. If you watched both my videos up to the ending, thank you very much. I would very much appreciate it if you could give me a like on this video because Having likes on any video for YouTube, it gives it more exposure. It helps it gets pushed up into the algorithm so that more people see it, and that there's a chance that maybe one of the developers for this game and this type of content will actually see this feedback and take it into consideration when they have their next meeting about features and such. So, thank you all very much. I will see you in another stream, another video. I'm possibly thinking of doing a Blue Protocol benchmark stream, as that's one of the games I've been highly anticipating and excited for. So look out for that if you're someone who's also Blue Protocol fan, ongoing fan, and someone who's looking forward to that as much as me. And I'll see you guys later. Have a good day. Have a good night, whichever time zone it might be for you. And take care. And hopefully this housing gets better.